Good evening. My name is Donald Nisbett, retired Navy captain, and the leader of the Transition Assistance Team for NNOA. The NNOA Transition Assistance Team are a bunch of veterans that offer a plethora of nonprofit, profit, government, entrepreneur, and academia work and employment experiences that we like to share with members. And so we've organized this evening's fireside chat. We have a series of about 6 for the year. And we want to thank you guys for taking the time to join us tonight. I have the distinct pleasure of introducing Commander George Floyd. He and I served together for a few tours, both when I was officer development and he was the XO at University of Texas, the NRTC unit there. And then when we were together, two-man team at University of Hawaii, but during COVID, no students, no spaces, and no plan. So, George, if you want to come off mute, thank you for taking the time tonight.
And I have to begin by giving Skipper Nisbett some flowers, overdue flowers that I'd meant to give to him at his when he PCS'd away from the unit. In my 30 plus years in the United States Navy, I've served under some leaders, from every socioeconomic group and demographic category you can imagine, but I never had the honor of serving underneath an African-American commanding officer until I worked with and partnered with Captain Nisbett as the commanding officer for the Department of Naval Science NROTC program at the University of Hawaii. And it was one of my greatest life's pleasures serving underneath you, sir. So I just wanted to put that out publicly and also say that the work that we did starting in the fall of 2020, the unit is now one of the largest programs in the entire NROTC domain. The 77 plus programs across the entire nation. University of Hawaii is now one of the largest, and I would argue probably one of the most well-accomplished programs, despite being the youngest and the newest of all the NRTC programs. So again, Skipper Nisbett, thank you so much, sir. With that said, I'd like to dive right into this evening's presentation. And I will say, for those of you that have joined us, thank you for taking the time to join us. I'm going to power through the presentation, and I would ask that as questions come up, if you would go ahead and post those in the chat. I'll pause probably about halfway through the presentation to address questions. And then, of course, when we get to the very end of the presentation, we'll have a more in-depth question and answer period. So with that said, if we could get to the very first slide, please. And I don't think that's the first slide that we're sharing with the audience. Okay, you guys should be seeing a slide that entitled resources, but my first slide, and I'll kind of get you up to speed. I wanted to just look at provide you with an overview of the actual agenda, which will start off with just a brief biographical introduction for myself. And then the next topic will roll right into the slide that you're seeing now, which is the resources slide. And then from there, we'll transition over to what I call my top 5 questions, which will make more sense when we get to that particular slide. Then we'll transition to my top 5 promises. And then finally, again, we'll end with a Q&A. So that said, I'll just dive right into my introduction. So in total, I served 33 years in the United States Navy. That would include about a year and a half of enlisted time. I started out as a nuclear trained machinist mate. enjoyed it. But I had made a promise before I enlisted in the Navy to my mother, who's now since passed, and that I would return back to college to complete my bachelor's degree. So with God's divine providence and his blessings, I was able to earn what was called back then, it was a hip pocket scholarship, which I think the intent back then, and this was again back in 1990, the Navy, as you know, and we've have always had a underrepresented demographic when it comes to the officer ranks. So the hip pocket scholarship was designed to identify highly qualified enlisted minorities that had prior college experience, but then that could go back and join an NROTC program and complete a bachelor's degree and earn a commissioning. My two choices then were Prairie View A&M University and Southern University. Based with that choice, I chose Prairie View because I felt if I went to Southern, there would be too many distractions of the female persuasion. So I really wanted to finish my degree, so I chose to go to Prairie View. And what I found to my dismay was there were equal number of distractions of the female persuasion. But that's a story for another day. So earned my commission at Prairie View as a surface warfare. Went through the nuclear accession program. Interviewed with I believe NAVCO8 at that time was Admiral DeMar. Passed the exam and then started my training track to the nuclear power program. Served on a total of 4 aircraft carriers. First one was the Dwight D. Eisenhower, later followed by the Abraham Lincoln. The Carl Vinson, I saw her through her RCOH, which is stands for Reactor Complex Overhaul, which essentially is just where you change out the reactors. Nuclear aircraft carriers are designed for about a 50-year service life, and typically under the old design A4W, the cores lasted roughly about 25 years. So at about the mid-life cycle of the A4W aircraft carriers, you would have to go into a major overhaul period and change out the reactors. So I oversaw that effort for the Carl Vinson back in 2007. And the last carrier I served on board was the USS Nimitz, the namesake for the Nimitz class, where we basically I served as the assistant reactor officer, and then did a host of other topside tours on conventional platforms to include an old Spruance class destroyer, the USS Thorn, and then followed by another gas turbine powered frigate, the USS Gary. And then I served as executive officer on board the USS Kidd, a DDG Flight 2 Alpha Arleigh Burke class destroyer. So the total of 7 combatants over, again, 30 plus years, and enjoyed every minute of it. I got a chance to do an individual augmentation in Iraq back in 2006, where I supported the counter radio controlled improvised explosive device effort. Back in 2006, our soldiers and Marines were being decimated by the insurgents' use of radio controlled IEDs. So CNO decided he was going to, because the burden of the fight was primarily falling on the Army and the Marine Corps. So we put a contingency of about 400 plus naval officers, all with an extensive EW, electronic warfare experience. So we all went in, spread out all throughout Iraq to support the various Army and Marine Corps regiments that were signed to throughout Iraq. And we taught them essentially how to employ various passive and active jamming systems to counter the radio-controlled IEDs. My efforts throughout 2006 were so successful that the insurgents reverted back to a more primitive type of IED, which is command detonation. And I know I'm throwing out a lot of terms, but I know most of the audience should be aware. But if there's anything I say or abbreviations that I use, please, if you want more clarification, you can post that in the chat, and we can go over that. Enjoyed my time in Iraq, came back, and then, like I said, did various other tours, both ashore and at sea. And again, the culmination of all my tours, and I think the highlight was my final tour with Captain Nisbett, where we were tasked to stand up a brand new ROTC program at the University of Hawaii. from that, I was able to do my actual retirement ceremony on board the USS Missouri, which for me in many ways was a very full circle moment because my father was one of the very first African American Marines. He was a Mumford Point Marine, served in World War II, enlisted at the age of 17, lied about his age because he wanted to be able to support his younger brothers because they had all been orphaned when both their mother and father died when my father was only 17 years old. So, my father served as a Marine in World War II. Oldest brother served in Vietnam as a Marine. And so, I did get a little bit of grief about joining the Navy, but, everything worked out just well. Again, I graduated from Prairie View, which I think I stated earlier. In my current assignment, I'm serving as a senior scientist with Savannah River National Laboratory. It's part of the Department of Energy Research and Development Complex. There are a total of 17 research sites, all scattered across the United States. You're probably most familiar with Oak Ridge, Lawrence Livermore, Los Alamos. Those were part of the U.S.'s effort to build the atomic bomb during World War II, led by Professor Oppenheimer and on the entire team of nuclear physicists that helped to build the first atomic bombs that we employed against Japan at Nagasaki and Hiroshima. So that was the genesis of the Department of Energy's research and development. At Savannah River National Laboratory, which dates back to the early 50s, the 1950s, our primary efforts are global security, weapons production, and environmental land management. As you can imagine, over the last 70 plus years of development of plutonium and other fissile materials and deuterium and tritium, all those necessary components to build fissile material for our nuclear stockpile, you're going to also develop quite a bit of carcinogenic and other types of waste products that have, for a number of years, affected groundwater and land. And so we invested quite heavily into some very, very elaborate land mitigation strategies and also capture and containment of a lot of the hazardous and carcinogenic waste products that were the byproducts of all of the weapons production of the actinides like plutonium and uranium. So I'm very proud of the work that we're doing at Savannah River National Laboratories. And I am a girl dad in homage to my favorite basketball player, Kobe Bryant, who was also a girl dad. I'm a girl dad of three beautiful young women. And finally, I am a very humble and I'm trying to be a better follower of Jesus Christ. So that's me in a nutshell. And I'll move on to the next slide. Okay, so with the resources slide that you're looking at now, my goal here was to give you a very broad overview of many of the resources that are available. You'll see at the very top tagline underneath resources, I will provide digital copies / links to NNOA, specifically to a Skipper Nisbett. So during my transition period, and because of the work that I actually did with Skipper Nisbett, I actually retired twice. And that's a long story. I literally had retirement orders in hand back in 2019. And then Rear Admiral Sands, who was the one star in charge of naval education and training, reached out and said, hey, I need an XO that's got direct ties to Hawaii and that also has experience in that, wouldn't mind extending for a couple of years. So, I think Skipper Nisbett jumped on the grenade first to be the commanding officer. And then I was like, hey, I would love to partner with you, sir. And so I was selected to go and do that. So I unretired. And then 2 years after that, after Captain Nisbett and I successfully stood up the ROTC program, I retired again. So in that process, I compiled some pretty exhaustive resources in the form of a digital worksheet that has embedded hyperlinks to a ton of resources. One of the first ones that I was actually able to earn my program management, my PMP certification was Onward to Opportunity. I'm not sure how familiar the audience is or is not with that program. It is a phenomenal program. Onward to Opportunity. When I last counted, I think they offer, I think it's 50 different certifications, and they range from the various human resources, human management type certifications to information assurance, cyber security, program management, et cetera, et cetera. There are at least 50, if not more. And I believe they're always adding to that list. But you can go to the link that I have listed here. And again, I'll provide this information to Skipper Nisbett to share with the entire audience. And it'll walk you through how you actually sign up for the program, and then how you can request to receive the various certifications. For those of you that are familiar specifically with the PMP, program management, it is a highly, highly sought after certification. And if you were to pursue it on your own, you'd probably spend somewhere around $1,000 or so between the training, the reference material, and then actually paying for the exam. Onward to Opportunity covers the entire cost, So you spend $0 out of pocket in order to earn, again, some of the most sought after certifications. And I named a few earlier, but some of the definitely more sought after, a lot of the IA, cybersecurity, PMP, and human resource management certifications available through Onward to Opportunity. The next one on the list is ACP. That's American Corporate Partners. It is a phenomenal. And I don't say that hyperbolically, but it is absolutely world class. I was partnered with a gentleman who's working for one of the top venture capital firms in the United States as a senior partner. And for an entire year, he and I would exchange emails, phone calls, just whatever questions I would have, if and the goal is to essentially prepare you coming out of the military to partner you with someone that's already in the industry and at the level that you want to enter that industry at. So if you're looking to go C-suite, they'll find someone, that say if you're looking to go into petrochemical, they'll find you with someone that's in that industry at that level, and they will partner and they will mentor you one-on-one for an entire year to get you prepared. And obviously, if you have less time than a year, then they'll whatever time you have available, whatever your planning horizon looks like, the mentor that you get partnered with will take that time and just dedicate themselves to answering questions, to giving you real life scenarios, what it's like, familiarizing you with the vocabulary, the market, letting you understand what the market looks like. So the goal is, at the end of that mentorship, you can then have a conversation with a hiring manager in that industry and be able to talk that language, just as if you have been working it for the past, 10, 15, 20 years. And so that's the beauty of the mentorship that you get through the AC program. It is world class. And again, zero cost. It costs you absolutely nothing other than the time, which obviously, if you're going to do it, you have to invest the time. But I think that kind of goes without saying. And again, you'll see the hyperlink that's embedded there. I'll push all of this material to Skipper Nisbett and the other members of TAT. So don't feel as though you need to take notes, but I definitely want you to focus and listen. And again, if you have questions, I'll pause here after this slide to maybe field a few of those questions, and then we'll press on through the presentation, and then we'll have time to answer any remaining questions when we get to the Q&A. The next bullet point, VA education and training. I can't say enough about the different programs. One particular program that I don't think there's current funding for, but it was a phenomenal program, but they may have future funding, but you can definitely do research. It's called Vet Tech. So Vet Tech is essentially a program where, again, like with Onward to Opportunity, where it would give you the various certifications. The Vet Tech program essentially pays for you to travel to various vendors that give that exact same hands-on training. Whether, let's say, if you want to learn how to program PLCs, program logic controllers, or you want to learn how to code in Python or whatever, you name it, whatever the skill that you want to acquire, Vet Tech would pay for all of the travel, the training, and it would also provide a stipend while you're doing that the ideal vet tech program is it's about a 6-month commitment. But at that time, you're getting a stipend to help offset your various cost of living expenses. So it's a phenomenal program. I don't know if there's funding specifically for FY25, FY26, but it's certainly a question that you could reach out to your VA counselor and ask the question specifically about vet tech. And again, the link there is embedded. So I'm going to get to the LinkedIn, and this is a really, really funny story for me. So I can't tell you how much preparation I invested into my transition. As I mentioned earlier, I went through the whole retirement process 2 times, which afforded me the opportunity to go through TAP, 2 complete cycles. So I was well versed in USA jobs, the difference between federal resumes versus civilian resumes. I mean, I could answer questions about the differences in my sleep. I was so well versed because I spent so much time going through the various trainings that prepared me for my transition. Well, nonetheless, to make a very, very long story short, I probably generated about 50 versions of my federal resume and submitted them to 50 different jobs. And I did the same with my civilian resume. I submitted closer to probably 100 different resumes for 100 different positions using my civilian resume. And we'll talk about the difference between, a targeted resume versus a very generic resume. But we'll get to that later. Bottom line is, all of that work over an entire year period, I got 1 or 2 interviews. So I was like really, really discouraged. But sorry about that. Am I still there? Can you still hear me, Skipper Nisbett? Sir? Mic check. Mic check.
Yeah, you're good.
I can hear you.
got you good.
Thank you. Thanks, sirs. So about a year's effort, like I said, 1 bite of the apple. And I was like really, really discouraged. But God in his faithfulness, because I invested into getting LinkedIn Premium and I put in the time to post my resumes, past experience, certifications, real quality, LinkedIn profile. And I got the year's worth of free LinkedIn Premium, which when you look on the link that you see embedded in the slide, that gives you the information how you can access premium LinkedIn free for 1 year. I got a cold call from Savannah River National Laboratory, one of their senior hiring officers. And the conversation essentially started with, "Hey, George, we saw your resume online. We want you to come be our chief of staff, and we're going to start you out at 200K. And so I'm like, okay, where's Aiken? And I'll be there as soon as I can pack my things. God moved in a miraculous way, but it was not absent of the work. I did the work. And that's what I want to encourage you guys. If you do the work and do the preparation and ask the right questions and admit when you need help, things will work out. Things will work out. So anyway, I'm a living example of that. So that's LinkedIn, and that's my testimonial, not sponsored by LinkedIn actual, but it's a true story. And I also will have in the digital resource that I'll provide to Skipper Nisbett and the entire TAT team, I'll also have examples from a really, really well-respected resume writing guide, both for both the federal and the civilian formats, as well as information on SkillBridge, which I'm sure most of you are well aware of. It is a phenomenal program. The Rulin course, you may or may not be familiar with the Rulin course. Rulin was initially designed for senior officers, flag level, admirals and generals. But then the founders of the program, they said, "Hey, this is such a really good program. We should expand it to also include senior enlisted and 04s through 05s." I don't know at present if it's designed to accommodate 03 and below, or E7 and below, but I definitely know it's applicable and available E8 and above and 05 and above. But again, it's definitely worth looking into. They put you together with a cohort of fellow officers or fellow senior enlisted, and you kind of go through this mentoring, peer formation group where you develop this cohort where, hey, if I've got connections that are in banking, but I have a friend of mine who wants to get into banking, I make my network available to him or to her, and then we leverage one another to get to wherever we want to go post post retirement or post separation. So it's a really, really phenomenal tool. One of the biggest takeaways from the ruling, many of you are probably familiar with the elevator speech. Is one of the things that, you know, if you haven't heard of that term, you need to know what is your elevator pitch. So if you can envision yourself, you know, getting on the elevator on the 20th floor of a building, and you know, let's say you get on the elevator and it's of all people, it's Robert Johnson, and you've been dying to meet him. He just happened to be in the same hotel as you, and you have to convince him why he needs to fund your next project. But you've only got 20 floors to make your sale, to make your pitch. Well, that's the whole concept behind the elevator pitch. And Rulon, it helps you perfect it. So you can do it if you get on at the 20th floor, but you can also compress it. You know, if you happen to meet Mr. Johnson and it's the 10th floor, you figure out how to compress that in order to convey to him, hey, why he needs to fund your project or to hire you on with his corporation. So anyway, that's one of the biggest takeaways. And again, one of the last things I have listed on here is Boots to Business, which is, again, a phenomenal program for those of you that have more of a entrepreneurial spirit and you're thinking about, hey, I've got this really, really great idea and I want to do my own thing. Boots to Business is a must. You should absolutely take that, a week-long course. And it's just some really good pointers. They tell you about how to put your team together, you know, how to get LLC, how to get your funding, perhaps how you can get funding for your idea. To talk about making sure you've got your legal representation, your business plan, all of that, you know, and they go into very fine detail to how you can launch a successful business. And the other, I think, brilliant part of Boots to Business is you get paired up with someone, a business person that has experience in as close as possible a sector that you want to go into. So if you're thinking about going into retail sales, they'll partner you with someone that's already doing it and that also has a military background. So you're getting that, again, that one-on-one mentorship to help you launch your business successfully. All right. And that's it. And pause for questions at this point.
Yeah, George, can you do me a favor? Just kill your video while you continue, and then I think that'll help with the bandwidth.
Stop. Okay. Is that better, sir?
Yeah.
We freed up some bandwidth. Okay. So are there any questions? Please don't be shy, guys. This is for you. So you have a captive audience, and I would love to answer whatever questions you may have. And there is no such thing as a dumb or silly question. Please rid yourselves of that thought.
Recommend you continue.
Okay, excellent. And if you'd rather post questions in chat, we can address them there. So the next slide that you're looking at now is a resource. I cannot take credit for this. This was provided to me via my TAP counselor. And what I would like to point out is, if you'll look, reading from left to right under the columns, you'll see at the far left, the first column, 18 to 24 months, and all of these are, you know, you can compress or expand based on your the specifics of your individual situation. But I would like to highlight under 18 to 24 month column, you'll note highlighted in blue, and all the text highlighted in blue are hyperlinks. So it'll actually, if you click on mentor, it'll actually tell you about what are some of the resources that are available through TAP that can link you with a mentor. And it also beneath that, you'll see the hyperlink LinkedIn. And again, once you click that will take you to a place where you can learn more about how to get access to LinkedIn Premium, which is, again, a must-have. And then the rest of this is fairly self-explanatory. It's a really, really good guide. I used this. I shared it with a number of my peers as we were all transitioning out of the Navy back in the the early 2020s, so 2020, 21, 22, when I retired. So this is a very, very useful tool. It consolidates a lot of really, really good things that you may not necessarily think about. The closer you get to retirement or separation, obviously anxiety tends to kick in. You've got competing interests. You're trying to do a really, really good job with your final assignment, but you're also slowly shifting your focus into, hey, what do I need to do to prepare myself? This is a really good sounding tool to help you kind of balance, like, what should I be focusing on as I get closer and closer to my retirement / separation. So strongly recommend, if that you use this tool, and yeah, if you've got questions, please don't hesitate to ask. But this is a very, very useful tool.
So George, I do have a question.
Yes, sir.
You'd go back to the previous slide. So I contend that I'm not sure how many people know 12 to 24 months out, or for that matter, maybe even 12 to 18 months out, that they're definitely gone, because it could be a failure to select situation. It could be a, hey, the perfect job came into view and it's 12 months out or whatever else. So my question is, if you find yourself at the 6 to 12 month point, do you go backwards and bring yourself up to that point, or do you realize that, hey, the water, the vehicle's left the bridge and I can't go back and put the genie back in the bottle? Do I start at the 12 month and go forward, or do I try to backtrack?
Sir, that is a phenomenal question. And I would say, sir, you got to go to the beginning. These are just, I would argue, suggested time periods. But my concern would be, if you find yourself at the 6 month point, you're like, oh my God, I'm out of here in 6 months, I'm not ready, and you haven't paired yourself with a mentor, you're going to do yourself a severe disservice. Because in many ways, I would argue pairing yourself with the mentor will help compress or help make up for the lack of time, if that makes sense. So
No,
I would argue
I totally
wherever
agree
you
with
are.
you got to go back, and you may not be able to do it all, but you got to be able
Yes,
to
sir.
find as much as you can to get yourself caught up to that point.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Great point.
Whatever time you have available, owe it to yourself to at least walk through this entire transition timeline. And you can, I would say, probably pick and choose, depending on, because everyone's situation is unique. But what you don't want to do is automatically limit yourself to say, oh, I've only got 3 months. I'm going to disregard everything to the left of 3 months, and then end up missing out on some really, really useful preparatory steps or references or resources that would have made the 3 months much more productive. That would be my argument. Yes, sir. Great question.
Totally agree.
Okay. There are no questions at this point. So this is the point where I really want to kind of slow down a bit, if I may, and kind of park. Skipper Nisbett, how are we doing on time, sir? Am I doing okay?
We got 25 minutes.
25. Excellent. So I'd like to take about 8 minutes or so to really, really park on this one particular slide, because for me, having gone through this process twice, and now being on the back side of it, I really, really, in putting this presentation together, I spent a lot of deliberate time and self-reflective time thinking of what are the questions I wish I would have asked of myself when I started this process. And the very first time, the first iteration. And so the first question that I wish I would have spent more time asking myself is, what do I want to accomplish in the next chapter of my life? For those of you in the audience, whether you spent 5 years or 35 years, the page has got to turn. You got to turn the page. And there's something about the mental exercise of, like, articulating that out loud to yourself. There's a page turning. And for some of us, it's more of a natural thing, and some of it's not, because you've gotten so good and so comfortable at what you've been doing for the last 5, 10, 15, 20 plus years. This is a muscle you haven't used in a while in many cases. So you owe it to yourself to be able to answer this question. And it doesn't have to be static. I want to emphasize that. You may go through this answering of these 5 questions. In the first iteration, you may come up with one answer, and then you go back through it a second time and come up with a different answer. But you owe it to yourself. What is it I want to accomplish in the next chapter? And once you get that answer, then I would say you would then matriculate to the next question is, what are the tools, what are the resources, certifications do I need to achieve that? So what do I need to add? What do I need to improve? Or what do I need to enhance? And that could be a certification. It could be a degree. God bless me to, at my 28 or 27 year point in the Navy to be able to go back and get an MBA. And I was definitely the oldest person in the MBA program, but I finished. So God is good. So, it's never too late. If you don't have the mindset that life is a learning process, and that every day you wake up, you should strive to be learning something new, then you're doing yourself a disservice. So what tools do you need? You have to be able to answer that question, and you need to write the answers down. There's one thing to go through the exercise of saying it and maybe thinking it, but it's when you write it down where it gets more resolution. And then third question is, what time will I commit to investing into my professional and personal development? For my specific MBA program, it was an executive MBA program. So I committed myself, and my wife still is mad at me for this, but I'll make it up to her. I'll buy her a diamond ring or something like that at some point. But I committed myself to studying, being in class for 2 years, every other week, Friday and Saturday for 8 hours. So I would get up, crack of dawn on Fridays for 8 hours and study, and then go through classes, and then do the same thing the following Saturday for 2 straight years. But and that commitment may not be that time consuming for you, depending on what is the tool that you want to add to your repertoire. But you have to be willing to commit yourself to that, and I guarantee it will pay off. It will pay off. And the next one is, who is my network? And I would imagine for many of you, when you hear network, you think of, professional networks. And of course, NNOA is a network, but there can be formal networks and there can be informal networks. And I think the wider you cast your net in terms of, identifying what your networks are, the more successful you will be in perhaps identifying either a new career, a new position, or training or certification, or whatever it is that you need to be successful. And how watered and nourished is your network? That part to me is so important. And it's important because I think, if you just cold call people that you haven't invested in, or you haven't spent time with, you haven't broken bread with, the likelihood that they're going to be willing to really commit invaluable resources or time to you are far less than if you have a warm, mutually invested relationship. So I strongly encourage you to do that self-reflection and figure out what your networks are, and then tap into them and make it a mutual thing. So while you're also asking for help, make yourselves available to others, because you could very well be the linchpin to helping someone else find their next career, to identify their next chapter. So make it a mutually beneficial type thing by making yourself available to others to help them identify what their next chapter looks like. And then finally, I would always ask my ROTC students, whether it was at the University of Texas or at the University of Hawaii, I would always pose the question to them, what's the difference between a goal and a dream? And I would invariably get, 1,000 different answers. And it's a one-word answer. It's the difference between a goal and a dream is a deadline. If you never give it a deadline, a hard deadline, which you can adjust, you can always adjust. But if you don't give what it is that you're working towards a deadline, it'll just be that. It'll always just be something, a dream, something you talked about doing and never really ever accomplish. So give yourself deadlines, and then as you approach the deadlines, you can make adjustments. We're all military people. We know about being flexible and committing yourselves to deadlines, and then updating those deadlines as facts on the ground change. Okay, and so once you get through those top 5, then this is the part where I really, really want to encourage each of you to make a commitment that I've gone through this exercise, I've answered my top 5 questions, but then I get to what are my top 5 promises? And these are promises that you make to yourself. And the first of those should be, I will continue to revisit my top 5 questions until they are resolved to my satisfaction. You know, and I know that sounds a bit not redundant, but it's iterative. It sounds, but it is. It's intended to be iterative. And so you go through those questions, and you may find yourself, you know, where you think, yeah, this I think I got this figured out, but then something else changes. You know, something unplanned happens, and then you commit, but you make a promise to yourself that, hey, once I get this new piece of information, just like you did in the military, you know, you can have a plan and facts on the ground change, then you have to revisit the plan. COA 1, you now shift over to COA 2. So you owe it to yourself. This is your future. This is your life. You owe it to yourself to have that same level of commitment and focus and attention to detail when it comes to planning your future. So promise yourself, first of all, that you're going to answer those 5 questions thoroughly to your satisfaction. And then this is the part that I think most of us struggle the most with, myself included, is we have to be honest with ourselves and our team, whether that's, you know, family, friends, your networks, when you need help. As a warrior, you know, the warrior mentality is we're trained to lean on our brothers and sisters, but we're also trained, you know, to be self-reliant, to be self-sufficient. And that can actually become a hindrance, you know, when it comes to transitioning out of the military. Because for many of us, when you transition out, you no longer have that band of brothers, that band of sisters that you're so familiar with. Your focus is shifted to transitioning, whereas they're continuing on with whatever the mission was, and you're kind of, you know, an army or a navy of one. But you have to be able to reach out and say, I need help, and you will get the help that you need. It requires humility, but I also think it requires bravery to say when you need help. Third promise, I will continue to enhance my commitment to remaining strong physically, mentally, and spiritually. You know, and I'm going to be the first one to confess. Since I left the military, you know, I put on a few extra pounds, but you know, I have also made commitments to maintaining my fitness. And I think, as we all know, it's your mental fitness, your spiritual fitness, and your spiritual and your emotional fitness. That's what helps you get through those tough times. And going through transition is a very, very strenuous thing that you go through. But you owe it to yourself to commit to staying physically strong, mentally strong, and spiritually strong. It will pay huge, huge dividends in terms of helping you deal with the stress. So please commit yourself to that and promise yourselves that you'll do that. Fourthly, be gracious to yourself. You're not going to get it right. You're going to make mistakes or missteps. You're going to miss deadlines. You know, you're going to miss certain opportunities. When that happens, give yourself grace. Give yourself grace. Don't be your own worst enemy by beating yourself up or maligning yourself. You know, we all have that inner voice that we have since we were children, that sometimes we can be our own worst critic. But so don't do that to yourselves. Be gracious to yourself, learn, be self-reflective, and then move forward. And then finally, avail yourself to all the benefits and resources that are available to veterans. You know, the product that I'm going to provide to the TAT group is only a small cross-section of the various resources. There's so many organizations that have committed themselves to helping veterans transition. Chief among those is your transition office. And if you haven't already visited your transition office and gone through the various TAP programs, you're doing yourself a huge, huge disservice. So please commit yourself to availing yourself to all the different resources that are available, whether they be financial, mentorship, professional development, certification specific. There are just so many amazing resources, and many of them come at zero cost, which is obviously something that's a huge selling point. You're worth it. And that concludes my presentation. Skipper Nisbett, at this point, we can roll into the Q&A period, sir. Oh, I'm so sorry. I did want to share one last thought before we transition. This is a particular quote that I fell in love with many, many years ago. I am such a huge fan of history, and one of the men in history that I have loved to learn about and consider to be one of our greatest presidents is Theodore Roosevelt. You know, many of you know him as the pretty much the architect of the Great White Fleet, which were the 6 or so battleships that sailed from the U.S. shores back at the very beginning of the 20th century. It was pretty much a proclamation, an announcement that, you know, the U.S. Navy is here. And so they sailed to Europe and around Europe, and they circumnavigated the entire globe, again, in the early 20th century, at the very onset of the 20th century. And for many people, that was the launching of U.S. as a superpower with the Great White Fleet. And so that was the initiative, the brainchild of President Roosevelt, Theodore Roosevelt. But anyway, and the man in the arena is a powerful quote, and its central theme is essentially, you know, it's easy to criticize, you know, when someone fails, but the critic is almost always the person standing outside the arena. And they never get their hands dirty, but they often have a critique of the man or the woman, you know, that risk it all, the one that's willing to risk failure, and perhaps reward. That is the person that should be celebrated, not the critic. So that's the central theme of this quote. I had it actually minted on the backside of my retirement coin, and I hope you find value in it. And you know, when things aren't going well, just know that, you know, you no risk is no reward. So we have to have the courage, and I think that's one of the things that's we learn in the military, is to be able to take risks. Obviously, you know, you want to make calculated risks, but oftentimes, and I think it's Edison who talks about, you know, how many times he failed before he achieved success. And I think he has the most, if not the most patents of any U.S. inventor in history. I think it's Thomas Edison. But he talks about how many times he failed before he achieved success. So this is a very, very powerful quote, and I'm sure you may have others, but this is one that I find a lot of resolution and comfort in when I reflect upon these words. So now I'm done. Skipper Nisbett, over to you, sir, for
Awesome.
Q&A.
Yeah, thank you very much, George, for that enlightenment. I'm showing three names that I don't recognize as being part of the team: Miguel, Odell, and Will Whitaker. So one of the reasons why we have this is for you. So what I'll ask is if you guys can come off mute, just, you know, briefly introduce yourself, and what is it that you'd either would like to get out of this, or like to see more of, or your thoughts. So let's start with Will first, unless you don't want to.
Not saying that I want to, but I will, since I've been put on the spot. How you doing, sir? And gentlemen, my name is Will Whitaker. I'm currently a VT3 instructor. I'm flying the T6 here in Milton, Florida. I'm about 30 months out from possible separation. So I haven't, you know, fully decided, you know, whether I'm separating or not yet. But just, you know, trying to get the everything, all the ducks in a row. Trying to figure out what programs are available, and all that good stuff. So this was great information. I literally typed up a little script that I was going to post in the chat. Great information. I sincerely appreciate all the information there. Definitely will be doing my research here coming up soon on you know, the TAT program and you know, Skill Bridge and the rest of the likes. I will be leaving out of Milton come October of this year, and I'll have 2 years on a dissociated tour back at sea duty. So I know that kind of changes some things as far as, like, you know, is Skill Bridge available to me and things of that nature. So those were going to be like the research that I had to do on my own, trying to figure out what exactly it's going to be available to me. The fact that I'll be on a sea tour and possibly on deployment towards the back end of my career if I decide to separate. But that's pretty much the gist about me. Any questions that you have for me or anything that you wanted me to speak on?
No, I appreciate you joining us. And when we started off, this is the whole purpose of our being, is that you don't have to go it alone. And I
Okay.
know on the screen we've got folks that have done that disassociated shooter tour, I'm guessing.
Probably.
But let me, in the time remaining, let's get to Odell and then Miguel. And once we're done with the hour, then we'll stop the recording, and then we can have I'll get my whiskey.
Hey, Donna, before you proceed, let me ask Mr. Whitaker a question, if you don't mind.
Yeah, please do.
Hey, Mr. Whitaker, this is Commander Navy retired.
Yes, sir.
Since you are planning on actually transitioning, you said about a couple of years or more, have you taken inventory of your skill sets that'll be marketable in a civilian setting? And then have you looked at who's doing what's marketable, and are you planning to obtain those skills if you don't have them, or figure out how you're going to fit in? How you're going to basically be competitive once you do leave? Can you comment on that?
Actually, I have or starting to get the process going now. So I have a little over about a 1,000 or so hours flying time. I recently just did the ATP CTP with Delta here within the last couple months or so, and I have another training with Sanders Aviation to get fully qualified to be able to have everything suitcased for the airlines, to possibly try to make a play for the airlines, and try to come out and possibly fly for Delta would be the one that I'm shooting for. Outside of that, the backup plan for that will be possibly staying in the military and going ready reserve, or what they call TAR now, if you're familiar with that. So if I can pick up TAR, I would absolutely consider staying in. Just starting a family now. Just had a daughter not too long ago. So all decisions are everywhere. Trying to figure out what I want to do with life and all that stuff, right? But yes, sir, that's kind of where I'm at right now. I'm just trying to get everything open up as many doors as possible, so that when the time comes and I need to make that decision, I'm prepared to make that decision, if that makes sense, sir.
Yeah, I appreciate that you're looking forward. You're not waiting till you 6 months to separate, not trying to pull things together.
Yes, sir.
You're looking at, short-term goals, intermediate, long-term goals, and how you're going to integrate and phase in. I appreciate you being candid with that answer, man. That's wonderful.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Trying to figure it out. Yes, sir.
Congratulations on the little one.
Oh, thank you, baby girl. Yes, sir.
Congrats, man. Congrats.
Thank you.
Another girl dad. Awesome.
Another girl dad. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Congrats.
Awesome. Odell.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Floyd, for that awesome presentation. I'm Odell Graham. I'm a member since August, when I went to the NNOA conference in Norfolk. I am looking at transitioning in about a year and a half. So I'm doing my best right now to take advantage of the benefits to active duty members. I'm sorry, I'm in the Coast Guard. So I'm planning to get my master's in business administration coming up in May. I'll also be making O3 in May also. And then looking at some credentialing assistant stuff on the side, getting my project management professional, and then maybe it's like a real estate license or something like that. I'm also working with the university that I'm going to with their career services center, getting my resume reviewed, LinkedIn updated, professional headshots, all that stuff, and starting the kind of networking and, what does my resume need to look like for the positions that I want. So that's where I'm at right now. One question I have is, as far as mentoring, I've definitely not done a good job doing the watering and nourishing of the network that you mentioned in your presentation. So I'm wondering, like, what you think the best way is to stay in touch, not be, like you said, cold calling, but not being too overbearing, being mindful of my own time, the mentor's time, but kind of that happy medium. What do you think there?
Skipping this, if you want me to take that one, or do you want that one, sir?
It's your show.
Okay, great. Tell me your first name again. I'm so sorry.
It's Odell, sir.
Odell. Odell, I was going to give you kudos because the laundry list of things that you're doing to prepare yourself is amazing, bro. You're so on it. You're so on it. So kudos to you, man. When it comes to the mentoring, I was really being very generic into when I talk about watering and nurturing. So there is no, you haven't lost anything. So whatever the status of your network, and networks are like what's a plant, like a cactus. Most networks, you don't have to water them a whole lot. You don't. So don't worry about it. It's not a unrepairable thing. So whatever the status of your network is, just start from there. And be honest, and people will appreciate that. Odell, they'll know where you are. And some of the more senior members of the audience may disagree with me, but it doesn't hurt to, hey, let's go out to lunch. What are you doing? And you pick up the tab. You know what I'm saying? I don't know anybody that doesn't want a free lunch, Odell. And particularly, you find a really good restaurant, and you pick up the tab, because that says you're serious about rekindling that relationship and making a serious time investment. And you assure that particular mentor, hey, whatever time you have for me, I'll take, and I will be appreciative, and I will not waste your time. And just be direct. Yeah.
Odell, if I would add, several of our previous skippers
Absolutely.
use the term that, I'm sorry. George, are you still there? So
I'm
some
still
of our
here, sir.
previous speakers have used the term you may not be familiar with. It's called pulling out your Rolodex. So that's an old school term for you. It's your Apple iPhone's contact list. And you know who those important people are? All your previous department heads, all your previous skippers, your exos, all those guys you've worked for before that might have gone on and transitioned. If they're in the field and on the outside, they make great personal contacts, especially if they were impressed by your performance when you were together. Then they're automatic. To me, those guys are automatically mentors. I get calls from JOs that have worked for me, department heads that have worked for me, and they ask for just conversation, chit chat. Let's go, like I said, go to lunch. Hey, can we do a Zoom call? I've got a permanent Zoom account, and we'll get face to face on a Zoom and just talk. All those questions that you're not sure about, somebody has the right answer. So don't be afraid to touch base with them. Even your peers, some of your peers that, didn't stay in, they got out after the MSR was done. If they're on the outside at a lower level, they make great points of contact on how they did it, but it's a grain of salt. Everybody doesn't do it the same way. Every opportunity doesn't work for everybody the same way, but the contact list of people personally is a great place to start.
Two other really quick points. Odell, the beauty of the ACP program, the American Corporate Partners, is they do the introductions for you. So look at that information, check out that link. ACP, you fill out an application, you essentially tell them what is the field that you're interested in and what is the level. Are you looking mid-level management, senior level management, C-suite? And then they will find the mentor for you. And then that person will commit to, it's a year-long commitment, but it can be compressed, because you're already at, I think you said, the 1 year mark. So in your case, it may be 6 months, but they will provide you with tailored mentoring to help you transition into the industry or sector that you're most interested in. And when it goes back to your old network, reaching out, to people that you haven't spoken to in a while, Odell, if the first person blows you off or doesn't give you a positive response, move on to the next one, brother. Move on to the next one. Because this is about you, man. This is about you. And you're gonna find someone that's excited. You're gonna find someone that's gonna have the same energy and the same excitement, like the skippers have alluded to. That's gonna be excited to mentor you, and that's the person you want anyway.
That's right. Good point.
So yeah, I was a protege in ACP, and now I'm a mentor. So we're on our 9th month with my protege, so I can talk from both sides of that. But let's go to Miguel real quick, and let's give you some mic time.
Hey, good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for a great presentation. I appreciate your time. So I'm Miguel Charles. I'm currently active duty Navy. I'm at the Joint Staff working at J5. I plan to retire next year in August of 26. Just for me, back in December of 2023, I'm a SWO. I had my last look for command, didn't make command, get picked up for command. And at that point, I kind of decided that I was going to go ahead and start making the steps as far as retiring. I did attend TAPS last year in November. It wasn't too bad. It was a lot of information, stuff I didn't know and realize. I did touch on the mentorship you mentioned, because I know for a fact that that's something I probably need, because most of my network, my contacts are still in the Navy. So something I need to like build out to as I kind of try and process my transition. I have been doing some of I had a similar, not the exact spreadsheet, but a similar spreadsheet that was shown earlier as far as a timeline of stuff to do. So I have started taking some of the steps as far as I have created a civilian resume. I did do that. I had someone draft that for me. I worked with them. I have already, already upgraded my my LinkedIn to premium for military. So there's that. And then I'm on a different, and I'm trying to go to like just conferences to network at this point, just to build out what I currently have.
Awesome. And like I said, this team, we so I can tell you specifically, we did a LinkedIn presentation last year, and the guy from LinkedIn, he talked about what's behind the curtain and how businesses use LinkedIn. And so how do you make yourself attractive? Because to George's point, hiring managers are always scouring that as a first line, and based on your profile, you'll get people reaching out to you. And so there's some definite tactics and techniques with that. But this group as an organization, I can testify that it helped me with my transition. And so my penance is to be in charge now for the past 2 years. So, but no, it's George talked about helping while you're being helped, and so it's ongoing. And you have advocates here, like you said, you got folks in the service, but depending on what it is that you're even contemplating, I guarantee you this network has a network, and then it's that second or third degree of separation that makes the linkage.
Skipper,
Yes, sir.
Skipper, I'm going to go back to the previous speaker. Please tell me your first name again.
Miguel.
Miguel. So you said something, and I didn't want to let it slide. You said something where you're kind of not really gonna, you don't intend to really reach out to your peers that are still in the Navy. Don't write them off. Couple of reasons. They may know there may be 1 or 2 degrees of separation between them and the person that's going to help usher you into your next position. I'm saying, so don't write them off just because they're active. They're still active. They may very well be the resource that you need to get you to where you go. So, and if you have a really close relationship with them, I think they're going to really be willing to really, make their network accessible to you. So don't write them off automatically.
Okay.
I'd like to ask Mr. Charles a question. I understand you're a joint staff officer. Now, you undoubtedly have TSSCI and probably other access. You're about to transition out. A lot of defense contractors should be falling all over you to hire you because you already have that. You're going through the background investigation. You got a high level clearance, so you can essentially walk in to some of those agencies as a civilian, basically TSA, DIA, all those other agencies. In fact, you've got a background investigation done, you probably can get a higher sign-on bonus or higher salary. A lot of people can't get that type of clearance. So maybe keep that in the back of the mind as one of your options, so you can transition those military skills over onto the civilian side, working with Booz Allen Hamilton and other defense contractors. Hopefully, you've got that under consideration.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anything is necessarily off the table. Like I'm being like realistic. I'm getting married this year, and my fiance is a little younger than me, and she wants kids. So I kind of want to make sure, like, I have a job.
Yeah, that clearance is worth upwards of $100,000 to the folks that hire you. And that, if they try to hire somebody that doesn't have one, they got to pay that if they want them to work in a classified industry. So that's a big money item. I don't know if you have the ability to, but make sure that around the time you're due to separate, you still got some time left on your 5-year clearance.
Yeah, so my clearance actually renews next year, and they have to renew it because the time difference between when I'm getting it and I'm still in the job
Big
kind of
money.
forces.
Big money.
Yeah, sir, you stole my thunder. I did that literally a year prior to my retirement. I updated my SSBI, my TSSCI, and it made a huge difference. Definitely.
Yeah, big money.
Okay, I think if Mike, we can stop the recording, and like I said, we're here for you guys. I wanted to open it up to the team for the folks that didn't get a chance to speak, and if you want to offer any other pearls, but